where the Indian market is right now with the massive growth that we have seen in sheer numbers. I think we are clocking close to about 200 million 5G subs. Data usage is increasing. We are in one of the markets with the highest data usage as well. There are almost 100 million content creators in India. A lot of micro influencers, nano influencers, and the ones that are able to monetize as well on YouTube and so forth.
I remember watching the Olympics a week back, and you can see that the concurrence is like 2.5 crore people, watching a streaming thing, where earlier we would have been, thinking of cable or even a satellite kind of a thing. So are you seeing those kind of behavioral changes happening?
You have a big gaming segment in India, and you could create a low latency proposition for them, and so I believe there is this need for segmenting.
So hello and welcome to another episode of Our Own Devices. This time we have with us somebody who's a familiar face. I should not be saying face in the podcast, but a familiar voice and face, because we have a video podcast too, on Our Own Devices, which is Jasmeet Sethi, who's the head of ConsumerLab of Ericsson and who's joining us from Europe. So Jasmeet, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nandagopal. Great to be here.
So we are going to talk about, again, this should have been a bigger buzzword, but it's not maybe getting the kind of traction maybe we expected. But we're going to talk about 5G. And last time we had a chat was soon after 5G was launched in India. And now we are almost 2 years into the 5G journey in India. And there is a lot of learning and maybe a lot to look up to in how this is going to shape up, right? And we all know that the Indian market doesn't always play by the rules. It creates its own variations and its own paths. Let's hear from Jasmeet if there have been any different learnings, any new use cases happening in India. So Jasmeet, how would you sum up this 2-year or 20-month journey of 5G in India?
No, I think it's been really exciting, watching this transition from 4G to 5G, sitting here in Europe, and I can tell you on behalf of a lot of customers that I meet here, in Europe or other parts of the continents, that all of them are watching very keenly in terms of what's happening in India. And I think the first point of attention was the sort of quick pace of rollout that we have had, and the massive rollout of about 400,000 sites. It's a massive effort. So kudos to the operators to ensuring that the basic foundation is there, which is, of course, we need availability, we need coverage to be rolled out. And I think that has taken a lot of attention from operators globally who are looking at this and taking inspiration from what has happened in India and are understanding the importance of rolling out coverage and ensuring 5G availability. So I think it's really a positive sign. And I think these 2 years, I would believe that this is a bit of a transitionary phase. We are in the very first phase of 5G deployments right now, where setting the foundation, setting the basics are going to be very important. And once we are transitioning from this phase to much more focusing on the monetization phase is where I think there would be more work needed. You talked about use cases. Definitely, we've been talking about it for quite some time, that maybe the way India should go is to think about more localized use cases that are going to work for this market. And then we see some great opportunities with fixed wireless access as well, considering where India is. I mean, we have the lowest fixed broadband penetration at just about 10%. So there is massive room to grow here.
So, the kind of use cases we were talking about maybe, a year back, which is like, with gaming and with, multi-angle television and all of that, that's not really, kicked in yet, right? But what we are seeing, as you said, very rightly, is that we can almost say 5G is the standard in the Indian market now. If you look at smartphones, if you look at the kind of networks people are using, and even when you're traveling, you are almost always on a 5G network. It's very rarely now that you go off it unless you're going very remote. Is that the way you had seen it, or is it slower than how you thought it'll become become into like a Korean kind of a market situation?
No, I think I mean, the adoption has been quite positive if you look at it. I mean, if you just look at the sales figures of 5G smartphones, I think we will easily cross 100 million mark in about a
Yeah.
year, as such. So it's been massive sort of uptake that we have seen. There is good appetite, and we pointed that appetite even last year when we said that there is a ready base which is just waiting for this technology to be switched on, and we continue to see that there is now more demand coming from tier 2, tier 3 towns, who are looking for this type of technology to be made available to them. So I think there are a lot of positive headwinds out here in terms of the demand, the appetite. We see that with the fact that the usage is also very high in the market. But that also presents a bit of a challenge on the side of expectations as well, because the Indian consumers are getting much more informed. They are quite educated and well read as well. So they understand what to expect from technology. They're not expecting things to happen overnight, but I think slowly and steadily they are moving in a direction where the expectations on what 5G should deliver would become a little bit high. So we might have to think about using more currencies than just the speed, and availability, and start thinking about how can we really think about personalization, and that's the trend that we are now seeing in more global markets where 5G has been deployed for quite many years right now, that a lot of operators from a monetization perspective are thinking much more about very sharp segmentation, going towards personalization, and then also a lot of tariff innovation as well, which I think is central to thinking about monetization.
Is there a reason why in the Indian market this tariff innovation hasn't really happened? Because a lot of people I think wouldn't even have guessed that they've moved to a 5G network because their tariff hasn't actually changed, except for maybe the recent past where we had a very small change in the pricing. So is that a necessary differentiator too, that you are paying for a service that is superior? You're paying more for that service, right? But I don't think that has really happened in the Indian market. So how would you look at that?
Yeah, I think that's the part that I think we might need to reconsider what the monetization strategy should look like going forward. Now, we see a lot of CSPs have gone with this, what they call price repair,
Mhm.
which was much needed, right? Because I mean, we are one of the markets with the lowest ARPU, so we need to think about the return on invested capital, and that remains very low. So it was much needed that we go in that direction and start increasing the base prices. But the question now is, how long before you keep increasing the base prices before you get some sort of a backlash? Because that price increase needs to fall in tandem with network improvements as well. And if you look at where the Indian market is right now, with the massive growth that we have seen in sheer numbers, I think we are clocking close to about 200 million 5G subs. Data usage is increasing. We are in one of the markets with the highest data usage as well. It will put pressure on the networks, and we are starting to see some signs of speeds decreasing while the availability has kind of improved. So that kind of raises a question of, okay, when do we shift this lever from price repair to more pricing innovation part, and that needs to happen at some given point of time. The question is, at what point do the Indian CSPs decide that now we have a good enough cushion on the base ARPU, and now we need to start thinking about tiering our 5G plans and not just giving away all the extra features and capabilities that we have on the network side for free. Because once you do that, you're just opening up the gates, and there is no rolling back. And I think that's what the learning has been out here, that once you give out flat rate 5G unlimited, you are in a little bit of a spot on whether you can roll back that sort of offering or not. So that's the only learning I would believe that we need to really consider at what point do we think about moving in that direction. And there are many routes which are available, right? I mean, we have talked about the fact that you can think about using technology like 5G standalone, for example, right, for differentiation on the fixed wireless access side. So there could be a base layer of fixed wireless access, which is best effort, and then you could have offer maybe guaranteed speeds, on the fixed wireless access side. And there are both types of users in the market, right? There are ones who don't want to pay much; they are quite happy with the best effort, and then there are those who are the high premium, high ARPU users who absolutely want the best performance in the market, and they are willing to pay extra, and that is an opportunity for the Indian operators.
Are you also seeing those, because we discussed about 5G as creating a mesh backup which helps your enterprise, for instance, right? Like this entire IoT ecosystem of billions of devices. Have you really seen that happen in India?
Well, as I said, I mean, it's still early days, I would say, and it's largely been an exploration exercise on the use cases. And it's not India. I think globally as well, when we look at enterprise sort of opportunities out here, it's been a lot of pilots, trials that are happening. Also to recognize that this is a difficult space, because you are dealing with enterprises that have specific needs. And for them, technology is secondary. What they're really looking after is the gains that they could have on the efficiency, on the productivity side of things. So what this would demand is that the CSPs think about, okay, what are those vertical demands, right? And to get deeper into it. And that requires an organization. It requires a culture. You need to have a sales force that is much attuned to understanding verticals rather than selling SIM cards, because that has been the traditional legacy that we are so used to selling SIM cards that we are not geared up as an organization to think about vertical needs. What does manufacturing need versus retail, for example, or versus healthcare? So that exploration, I believe, it's still going to take time. So I believe for the next 2-3 years, the consumer market is still going to be very important, because there is massive opportunity out here to grow your revenue base, to think about fixed wireless access, to think about what we call differentiated connectivity, which is very personalized sort of offerings. And that sets you up very well to then, branch out and look at more enterprise offerings. So I think there is, when I speak with a lot of operators, I mean, the reason why they're looking at India also is that, we have the most fertile, sort of situation in terms of a ready market, right? So if you talk about personalization, for example, right? I mean, let's look at content creators. There are almost 100 million content creators in India. A lot of micro influencers, nano influencers, and the ones that are able to monetize as well on YouTube and so forth. And what do these guys need? They're looking for a reliable uplink. They're not so concerned about downlink. That's for their subscribers to kind of stream what they're creating, but they're looking for a better uplink sort of capacity. So there is an opportunity to think about, okay, can we do a proposition where there is a better uplink that can be offered with 5G standalone, because standalone does offer you that sort of capability. And for somebody for whom this is a livelihood, he's not going to mind spending $4 more, if it gives him a reliable uplink to ensure that the video that he has uploaded gets uploaded in time on YouTube and is available to its followers and subscribers. So you have this content creator segment, and we see this, that the Chinese operators, if you look at the Asian operators, they've taken that approach, and they have generated in a matter of 6 months over $100 million just from targeting content creators, these specific segments. Then you have gamers. You have a big gaming segment in India, and you could create a low latency proposition for them. And so I believe there is this need for segmenting the market and really think about personalizing, really think about differentiated connectivity. And if you go in that direction, there is always going to be service revenue growth. But if you continue to rely too much on just tariff repair, increasing 10-20%, mid-year or every year, what we've seen is that we see that from all the research that we are doing is that about 40% of Indian subscribers are telling us that I'm only going to accept this if it comes with network improvements. So yes, you can charge me 10, 20%, but it needs to follow up with network improvements. And then there
Yeah.
are about another 18% who will absolutely not accept any price increases. So they will always look for either degrading, downgrading themselves to other plans and so forth.
I understand that you're in a way have to offer solutions for certain sets of users who, again, given the scale that India offers, is again millions of users, right, in each of these buckets. But have you also seen the Indian market come up with its own solutions? Because we always have that kind of a Jugaad thinking, okay, let us use this to solve a problem that we have. Have you seen the market itself
Mhm.
come up with its own solutions?
Yeah, I honestly, I would have expected that this would have happened,
Yeah.
but I don't think we are there yet. Uh, we see 5G as much more like an innovation platform, right? So
Hmm.
it's more an enabler for the ecosystem, whether those are startups and other players in the ecosystem to build on top of it. Now, what is the biggest advantage right now that you have great networks? It ensures that the over the top players can deliver their services very, very reliably. So that has started to happen right now. If you look at the growth for Netflix and some of the other streaming players, right, I mean, they're seeing some
Yeah.
very good growth coming from the market. So it was needed, and now the market has it. Now, whether Netflix or some of the other big players think about launching a premium feature that actually relies on 5G capability, well, that has to be seen in a way. But the platform
Yeah.
is now available, right? I mean, we are delivering great speeds, we are delivering better availability right now, and that is what I believe is are good ingredients for the local startups to kind of think about what can be done innovatively to address the market needs of the consumers. And this is where I think there are so many of opportunities. I mean, really think about we are a nation which loves sports, right? And we have our leagues and big games that tend to happen. But if you look at if you speak with people who usually go to these games and are in the stadiums, 90% of
Yeah.
the time you walk into the stadium thinking that you're going to face an issue, right? Because it's capacity, it's congested. You might not get a good experience on your 4G, 5G, and this is where you have an opportunity to think about, okay, can I bring an offering to the market which offers you a higher priority, more resources assigned to you in some way, and you pay extra for that, to ensure that I'm able to watch replays. Because if I miss even a few seconds of the game of cricket, the moment is lost, right? So we see a lot
Yeah.
of people kind of watching replays when they are at the stadium and so forth, but then there is buffering, and it just spoils the overall experience out there. So we now see a lot of these global operators kind of moving in that direction. For example, Singtel now offers what they call an express pass, which is
Mhm.
a concert sort of a pass, which offers you higher priority, better reliability with network slicing. So when you go into a concert or you go into a game, you can just opt for that express pass, and then the network provisions you more resources, so you're not impacted by congestion or sort of capacity constraints. And I think that's super interesting, for a market like India, which is very extremely dense, and these congestion issues will always come up.
Have you seen consumer behavior itself change because you are on a completely different kind of network much faster? For instance, like I remember watching the Olympics a week back, and you can see that the concurrence is like 2.5 crore people, watching a streaming thing, where earlier we would have been, thinking of cable or even a satellite kind of a thing. So are you seeing those kind of behavioral changes happening?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think we pointed towards that, last year as well. I think the
Yeah.
Indian smartphone user is very, very advanced in terms of their usage, right? And I think
Mhm.
one new category which has now been added in the existing set of category of applications is Gen AI, right? If you look at
Yeah.
ChatGPT and OpenAI, for example, India is now the second largest market in terms of
Yes.
ChatGPT users, right? Now, the traffic profile of these Gen AI applications is very bursty, and it's very, very uplink centric, because you're sending text to the server needs to look at the prompt and then kind of respond back. And the way this will go is that right now we are working with text, but it could be audio, it could be video, for example. So the LLMs can recognize what you're seeing, for example, and then you can ask, what is that I'm seeing? Where can I buy this? So imagine if you have these Ray-Ban Meta glasses with Meta AI enabled in them, and then you just having a conversation with Meta AI that I'm now seeing a great piece of crockery or an item in front of me in the restaurant. Where can I buy this, right? And you get those contextual responses in a way. It is very, very latency sensitive, right? And that's where I think the networks and the last mile also will come into play out here. So far, we've been designing networks for video, which has largely been downlink. I think in the future, we will be designing networks for AI traffic, which is largely going to be uplink centric. And I think that is going to be the big change that we might need to prepare for the next 5 years, because we will see AI now, Gen AI, getting integrated in pretty much every app that you can think of, right? From WhatsApp to Facebook to TikTok to any of the applications, social media applications or utility applications that we have. I mean, we have Microsoft Copilot in Teams right now as well, right? So
Gmail, for
even
instance.
Gmail, for instance, right? So all
Yeah.
productivity applications, social media, and so forth, AI is going to be an integral part. And then you will not judge the network on, because traditionally the mental index has been, oh, let me do a speed test, right? Or let me try to stream a YouTube video and see if there is any buffering, because that was my mental index to understand how good is the network, right? Now, but going forward, I think you would judge that on how quickly ChatGPT responds, because you are expecting low latency from these responses. And that then becomes the mental index on how good are the networks. And that will depend upon the uplink capacity, because if you look at where 5G networks are today, we are in the range of delivering about on average 250 megabits per second on 5G, but the uplink is anywhere between 10 to 16 megabits per second, right? It's extremely low. So it's an asymmetrical sort of setup, which is very, very downlink heavy and less on the uplink. But with AI gaining traction, we would have to think about what to do with the uplink. And that's where 5G standalone would really come into the picture. This is where we need true 5G to be available at a wide scale.
Now, before you wind up, Jasmeet, if I can ask you, like, as a user, what would you like to see in the coming months in the Indian market?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I would like to see more innovation, in the Indian market, and I clearly see there is a lot of low hanging fruit in terms of what we can do, what the operators can actually do and deploy and trial and test. So far, I think we started with a bit of this extremely high expectation on what 5G could deliver in terms of new experiences and new use cases. And then we got ourselves grounded to say, okay, we will just do mobile broadband, or we will just do fixed wireless access, which is pretty much just access. So I believe we really need to do two things. One is, if we want to grow the revenue base, the service revenue base, and have a healthy industry, the monetization strategy needs to be thought through. And this is where I would say think a little bit, not pricing repair, but pricing innovation. And then the other part is work with the ecosystem. This is very, very important. Your partnership strategy. How are you engaging with the startup community? Is there a test bed which is available with, let's say, 5G standalone capabilities and so forth for these startups to come in and see, okay, can we do something here? And these test beds could be arenas, for example, stadiums. These could be campuses, for example, or the factory floor, right? These are all test beds for the ecosystem and the startup to test, trial, and see, how can they really enrich the experience both for enterprises and for the consumers. And that is what I would wish that I can see over the period of now next year, 2025, that there are some stellar talks or trials that happen which raise the bar on what 5G can deliver.
So, Jasmeet, thanks for being on the show again. Again, very insightful. I'm sure everybody's using 5G, but to know what's really happening in the market, that's the kind of conversation we love to have. And thanks again for being on the show.
Most welcome, Nandagopal. Anytime.
So you were listening to Our Own Devices. We'll be back again next week with another guest and a lot more knowledge. Till then, we are available everywhere you listen to your podcasts.